What's up, y'all? It's Tactical Chris with Fun and Guns. Just kidding. I'm not a licensed firearm instructor. I also don't do firearms videos, but I decided to do one lately. I live in California, and most of the people in California are leftists. They're afraid of guns. They're anti-gun. They've allowed politicians to push laws that have made guns very, very difficult to acquire. And due to the latest riots with Antifa and BLM, and the fact that they want to defund police, a lot of people have begun asking me about firearms. So I felt that it was the time to do it right now. I've done EDC, or everyday carry, videos about carrying things with you on an everyday basis, like tools. And a firearm to me is a tool just like that. Many of the laws in California to me are just outrageous because they want you to think of a gun as something so super dangerous. But to me, it's a super scare tactic that the leftists are fear-mongers. They want to scare you about everything. When you look at the coronavirus stuff, look, they make people wear masks. They've shut down businesses and destroyed the economy over it. To me, they go way outside of their bounds, but that's a different video. So anyway, in California, there is a good thing about some of the laws, the way I see it. In a lot of ways, firearms are regulated so that you cannot alter them to make them more dangerous than they already are, according to leftism. And in a way, that's a good thing because it limits the kinds of firearms that we can have in California. And in a lot of ways, it gets rid of some of the really, truly dangerous firearms to me because they just don't function properly. The laws make sure that at least your firearm is functioning in a basic way. And to me, it's a good thing too because honestly, if you buy a firearm and you can't even shoot with it, you shouldn't be modifying it anyway. Okay, so if you're inside of a barn, you got the doors closed and the windows closed, and you fire a firearm and you can't even hit the side of a barn, that's probably a good sign that modifying it isn't going to make you a shooter. Making you a shooter is when you practice and train. And that's something that I recommend. The first thing you should do is train. Begin some basic training. Learn how firearms work. Learn how to handle firearms. Learn what the safety rules are. Right here, I'm at my private range here. I have my firearm here. I'm gonna obey all the safety rules of the firearm. I've got the slide locked back. I have a little orange device in the chamber here to make sure that I know that there's nothing in the chamber. I can visually inspect that the chamber and the breech are clear. I have no magazine in it. You can see right through the bottom. There's nothing there. I always keep it pointed in a proper direction. Here are my magazines. This firearm came with 2 magazines, okay? This is a SIG P220 carry. I'm gonna point it down that way because there's nobody down that way. All right. I like SIG Sauer. It's one of my favorite firearms because the frame, which is this portion of the firearm, or the lower receiver portion, and then the slide are not made of plastic. They are made of steel. Most guns are polymers. They're plastics. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with a plastic gun. But, sorry, I'm anal about my guns. If you can see, it kind of looks new, but I put 1,000 rounds through this firearm. And, it is the newest firearm I own, but it still looks pristine because immediately after I go to the range, I break it down, I oil it, I clean it, I oil it, I lube every part of it. So you can even see some parts where there's some oil kind of residue that may have dripped through while I had it in the box. But for the most part, I clean my firearms regularly because you get dirt and grit in there sometimes, and even the ammunition casing, when it explodes, there's a powder that explodes that spreads. It gets spent and burnt inside the firearm, and it builds up on some of the oils that you may have. So you have to clean it every time because eventually that stuff's going to cause your firearm to malfunction. Now, I showed you that it's empty, and I showed you that I follow safety rules, but at the same time, I want you to realize that this is not dangerous in and of itself. Look, I can pull the trigger, nothing happens. Even if I were to close it with the hammer ready to fire, I've got it facing the correct direction. Look, nothing happens. So in and of itself, a firearm is nothing. It's not dangerous. I can't hurt anybody with this unless I hit them with it. But that's no different than if I use, you know, that metal thing there, or a hammer, or a spoon. There's a great movie with Kevin Bacon called Murder in the First. It's about a guy who gets a first-degree murder charge because he's thrown into prison from a 3 strikes law, and prison makes him into a murderer. He takes a spoon and he stabs it into someone's throat. Okay, and then he has to defend himself. That they have to show that he wasn't really a premeditated murder. He was made that way by the prison system. But it shows that a spoon can be used to kill somebody. Okay, so all these laws that Democrats and leftists like to push to protect everyone are really screwy, because if someone is, again, psychotic, it doesn't matter what laws you have, they'll hurt somebody no matter what they're holding. And again, with the rules we have in California, this is, you know, basically useless. If you're not good with it, it's nothing. Even if it has ammunition in it, really you should be training, and you should know how to use your firearm. So this is a hammer fired firearm. There are different types. There's striker fire, there's hammer fire. You can see because there's this hammer right here. I can even cock the hammer back so you can see it, see? And see how the trigger moves with it? When you cock it all the way back, you pull the trigger to bring the hammer forward to strike the ammunition casing in there to fire the bullet, okay? It comes with a decocker. So the decocker is like, let's say you rack around, you want it chambered inside here, you want a round to be inside the muzzle there, but you don't want to fire it, you can do what's known as decock it, right? And you just pull that, and it brings down the hammer without the hammer striking the bullet all the way, or bullet casing, the shell casing, the primer, okay? So this is a hammer-fired semi-automatic pistol, okay, or firearm, or handgun, okay? Handgun, because I can hold it in my hand. I follow all the safety rules. I make sure it's, I always treat it as if it's loaded, even though I know it's not. I keep my finger indexed to the side of the trigger without it being inside the trigger guard like most people do, so that I don't fire it, because I treat it as if it's loaded. Make sure I point it somewhere safe so that I can show it's not loaded. In the beginning, I had the slide cocked back so that you could see that it wasn't loaded. I have this little device that goes inside the breech, which is a little opening there, and the opening for the muzzle, to show that there's no ammunition inside. I even showed that there was no magazine loaded to it. So this is a safe, unloaded firearm, okay? All firearms to me are safe. Again, it's up to the person handling it. You could have a fully loaded firearm, and it could be unsafe with somebody who doesn't know how to handle it, but it could be totally safe with someone who's an expert at it. So anyway, but the people who are afraid of firearms, I actually would love to shoot with them better than the people who are so cocky and confident that they know everything about firearms that they become neglectful, and you know, they basically, they could accidentally kill you because they're so arrogant about knowing firearms that they forget all the safety rules, and they just do whatever they want. So again, this is semi-automatic. What does semi-automatic mean? It means that it's not automatic at first. You have to manually chamber around. So what happens is you load this magazine. There are bullet casings in, or ammunition cartridges in here that you load up, and there's a spring here you can see inside the magazine that pushes this follower up. It follows the ammunition in. So you insert it inside, okay, with the ammunition, and then as you rack back the slide, you open it up, and the first bullet pops up, and then when the slide racks forward, it pushes that bullet into the breech, up the ramp into the muzzle, so it's ready to fire, okay? And it at the same time cocks this hammer back, okay? That is all done manually, okay? And then after that, when you decide to expend that round or shoot it, you pull the trigger, it explodes, the bullet goes out the front, the force pushes the slide back and kicks out. There's a little thing called an extractor that hooks around the back of a bullet, kind of like this. So when the slide shoots back, the extractor hooks on that bullet and it kicks it out. So it pulls it back and kicks it out of the chamber here, and you'll see it fly, the casing fly out the side, okay? All right, and then it slides back, strips the next bullet, does the exact same thing as the beginning. That's where it becomes semi-automatic, where it's almost automatically loading that next round, okay? So that's considered semi-automatic. There are two types of semi-automatic pistol. You have the hammer fire like this, which has a decocker, and you have what's known as a striker fire. Most Glocks are like that. I wish I had a Glock with me right now because I could show you that. But a striker fire is actually a pin inside here. It's not a hammer, it's a pin that goes back with the slide and then comes back forward, and it's cocked. And then when you pull the trigger, that pin goes forward and it strikes the back of your ammunition and causes the primer to explode and ignites the gunpowder inside and projects the bullet out the front, okay? That's striker fire. This is hammer fire, okay? This is also double action, single action, okay? Double action refers to, you know, what the motion of the trigger. Single action is you just pull the trigger once and it brings the striker or the hammer forward to fire the firearm. Double action is when you pull the trigger from this kind of position on some hammer fired firearms, where you can pull the trigger and it does a double action. It cocks back the hammer and then eventually it allows it to come forward. It releases it. See, this is not an easy action, okay? Because it takes a lot of pull. There's a lot of pounds of weight of pull that you have to do to cock that hammer back before it does that first action completed, and then the second action releases the hammer, okay? All right. But if you cock it, you can see the trigger is back mostly already. The pull for this is very light, and eventually it just, boom, releases, okay? So double action, your initial fire, if you have it decocked, will be to pull. This is about a 5-pound pull. That's a lot of pressure, and in that time you can see the gun can move. It can move to the side as you're pulling it. So if you're aiming at something, it can pull it to the side, and then boom, you're firing off and to the left of whatever it is you're aiming at. Okay, so as you can see, I have a front sight, which is right here, and I have the back sight, the rear sight here, which has the 2 dots. When you're aiming, you line up the front and the 2 rear dots, okay? Now if I do that same pull without cocking the hammer back, you can see how the sights get off alignment, right? If you're not doing it properly. That pull is so heavy that it takes the sights out of alignment. It's better to have a lighter pull that just eventually it fires the firearm and boom. See, the sights move very little, okay? All right, so that's double action, single action. Like with a Glock, you cock it back, and then single action is just boom, 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 and it's all semi from there. Semi, boom, 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 okay? All right, it's all single action. Just releases the striker. With revolvers, I don't have a revolver, so I can't show you that. That's those are cylinders instead of magazine strips that go in here. You use the cylinders as your magazine. I'm not going to get into revolvers right now because I'd rather have one here so I can show you. But you get 6 shots with a revolver. In California, we're only allowed the 10-round max. Okay, so we can only buy 10-round magazines here in California. Now, those laws are gradually changing. They think that 10 rounds is gonna be safer than 26 rounds or 15 rounds or 17 rounds or whatever, how many rounds your magazine will hold. That to me, again, is ridiculous. There's an explosion going on here and something's shooting out the front in excess of 1,000 feet per second. So, you know, how safe can that be? Okay. How did I choose this firearm? I went to the firing range and I rented a lot of firearms, okay? And I wanted to see, how do they feel in my hand? Can I get a good purchase? This gripping the grip with your hand is called a purchase. Are you getting a good purchase on your firearm? I got a pretty good purchase on it, meaning it won't shake out of my hand. If I fire it and it recoils, it's not gonna fly out of my hand. I have a very good purchase on this firearm. And the initial purchase that you get, if you're drawing from a holster or from your waistband holster, that is your master grip. Your master grip is the one that controls. It's the master over. I mean, a lot of leftists are going to be totally PO'd and offended by what I just said there, but the master controls the gun, which becomes the slave. In other words, it does whatever your grip tells it to do. You want to get a good grip on the tang. So like this is the tang portion of the firearm, the bend here. Many swords have tang also. So you get that webbing part into that tang. You set the pad of your hand right here. You set that pad right in there, and then you wrap all the meat of your hand around the firearm. The thumb touches the side of the firearm and keeps it. Some do thumb forward, some do thumbs high. Some do things where they put their thumb on top of their hand. I don't like this because then it opens up this portion. My hand is not touching this part of the grip, and the gun can turn this way. When I have my thumbs here, it gives you a little bit of recoil management, firearm pitch control. And when you do thumbs high, it gives you a little bit better control in that regard. So if you're firing and you have your hand and your finger in the trigger and you pull, the gun veers off to the left, the thumbs high will offset some of that. And when you have two hands on there, the other thumb up here will also offset that. So it gives you a lot more recoil management, recoil control. Recoil, for those who don't know, is when the firearm explodes inside and shoots that bullet out the front. The laws of science are, to every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction, right? I believe that was Isaac Newton who came up with that law. It's the law of inertia, right? To every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So when a bullet is going out that way, your gun is coming back this way at the same force, right? And so you have to control that explosion. So the gun will usually pitch upward after the round goes out the front. And if you have a good tang, good grip on that tang in the back right here, it does some of that recoil management, and again on the sides, and your master grip will control some of that recoil management, do some recoil management as well. So how I chose this, I went to the range and I picked up a lot of Sig Sauers, and I know the Sig Sauer felt really good in my hand when I would grip it. Like everything just fits. See the tang here on the trigger guard, my finger fits right perfectly there. The tang here on the bottom of the grip fits right by my pinky. And I get a really good purchase on this gun. It just feels good. It ergonomically feels good in my hand. And my finger on the trigger, the side of the trigger guard here, in my trigger discipline, everything feels good. And then when I finally put it in the well there, I have a really good grip on this firearm. And I feel secure, and I can hit things accurately with it. This is again chambered. I don't know if I said it before, but this is again chambered in 45 ACP. And it can come in, you can get firearms chambered in different calibers, like 9mm, 40, things like that. But it all has to come down to your taste, your decisions. I've done some studying on ammunition types, and everything is science. It's mass times velocity. Okay, so right, force equals mass times velocity, right? So if you want a good force, you need a little bit more of a mass of a bullet, and then the velocity that it carries it at will determine how much that force is when it hits you, right? And so 9mm, I like 9mm, but it doesn't quite have the impact force that I want in my defensive handgun. So I use this as my self-defense firearm. You know, I use this for concealed carry. That's why it's called the P220 carry. P220. The carry version is a little bit smaller than the standard. It's more compact than the standard. I use that so I can conceal it. Concealability is easy because the magazine only has a single stack of rounds, and as you can see, 8 is the maximum. So this is 8 plus 1, which means 1 can be in the chamber and 8 can be inside the magazine. And that keeps it legal. I have gone to firearms courses where they have told us that as long as this magazine is in the firearm, you can have another magazine that's more rounds, and it's not illegal to hold it. That I'd have to check with a lawyer, and I am not a lawyer, so I'm not advising people to do that. If you own magazines with extensions that go out to here, or with a drum magazine that has like 100 rounds or 50 rounds or whatever, that you can, like double drum magazines or whatever, that's on you if you want to do that. I suggest, honestly, that you follow the laws in California, because breaking them, even though I don't like these laws, breaking them has worse repercussions. And at that point, once you get on the bad side of the government in California, then it kind of forces you to be a criminal, because the only way you're going to be able to have a firearm is illegally. And that starts a whole lifestyle that I don't think most people want to get into. I definitely don't want to get into that. I have a clean record. I'm a good person. I don't break laws. But if it gets to be where the government gets to be too oppressive and starts to take our rights, it is our right to defend ourselves, okay? And the government has no power or authority to take our rights away from us unless they're becoming a dictatorship or a communist type government where they just control everything about your life. And I'm not willing to live in that kind of society. And reality is, America is one of the few places that gives you that freedom to exercise your rights. So it's something that we need to discuss publicly as a country, something that we need to consider as individuals. Like, how much power are you willing to give your government? Because they can really control your life and make decisions for you that you most likely will not agree with. So again, magazine capacity is a consideration. So this is a single stack, almost like a 1911 style magazine. 1911 is a platform of firearm that is World War II famous and very, very thin. It is a bulkier gun. I do have a 1911, but I'm not showing that. What else about this? Let's see. I like that it's small and compact. It is weightier though, because again, the Sig Sauer frame is not a polymer plastic frame. This is the frame portion of the firearm, okay? This is also known as your lower receiver portion, okay? This is your upper receiver with the firing mechanism and the barrel of the firearm. The lower in many firearms, like Glocks, is made of plastic. There's nothing wrong with that, but it depends on the type of ammunition that you use. Some ammunition comes manufactured by companies, and it's good, it's reliable, it's consistent. When you fire a different round each time from that company, it gives you the same result no matter what. But there are rounds known as reloads that people can load on their own, and the consistency of that cannot be as good. Or if you get a really bad manufacturing company that doesn't know how to manufacture rounds, they're new, or they're not professional, and you load your firearm with that round, sometimes those rounds can explode in a way that is not the way that they're supposed to explode. In most cases, they're supposed to, you have the loose bullet side on this side, and you have the cartridge side that contains, the shell side that contains the gunpowder and the explosive portions. And when it explodes, it's supposed to force out the bullet this way so that the explosion force can continue this direction. There is some force this way, some force this way, and some force this way. As we talked about with inertia, you'll have your recoil. But if the round is not put together properly, the cartridge is not assembled properly, and is not manufactured to spec or to specifications, you can get a round that explodes inside the casing, sometimes inside the gun, and you'll get fragments and things that shoot out. It breaks the plastic and shoots out the side. So imagine you're holding here your firearm, and the round that's right here gets struck and explodes. Or the round that's right here, actually, because it gets stripped and pushed in. The round in the chamber explodes, and you get all these fragments flying out the sides. If you don't have a steel firearm, see with the steel will take much of the brunt of that force of that explosion. If it's just plastic or polymer, you know how weak plastic is. Things break easy. With enough force, you can break things. That's why we like to shoot plastic, because, you know, a lot of plastic things break. You know, and if you get fragments, you blow off your hand, you can blow off your fingers. Some of that can shoot out back at your face, and it can enter your eye, blind you, it can kill you in a worst case scenario, or it can mangle your face or injure you severely. So you're dealing with explosive inside here. And so you want to keep that in mind when you purchase a firearm. Yes, a polymer frame firearm is cheaper, but how cheap are you willing to go to risk your life in a defensive situation? I'm not willing to do that. I mean, I do own Glocks, but they're not my favorite firearm to shoot. They were my first firearm, and I do kind of push people towards Glocks first because they are very simple. They are very relatively inexpensive for reliable firearm. A Glock is proved to be reliable. Back in the Counter-Strike days of video gaming, when we used to play Counter-Strike, a Glock was known as the terrorist weapon, because you know, it's been shown you can put a Glock in mud, and you know, you just rack it a little bit, get the mud mostly out, and then it still fires. It can get wet and underwater. You can fire it underwater. That's great and all, but again, I want that steel there. And so I do like this, and it looks sexy to me, and the way that they coat the steel, it's nice. I mean, in the front, it has stippling on the trigger guard where I can, if I wanted to put my finger there to add a little bit more recoil management, I could do that, although I don't do that, but if I wanted to, I could. And just the feel is real nice and sexy and sleek. And again, this is a stock firearm. To me, stock firearms, if you can't hit something with a stock firearm, you just suck as a shooter. And you really, modifying it isn't going to make you a shooter. You're just going to make your missing a lot more cool looking. But the reality of it is, if you can't hit your target, then no amount of repairs or modifications are going to make you better. You have to be able to hit it stock. So again, go to the range, train. Let's see, what else about it? This assembly is real easy. I'm not going to do that because I don't have a stand for my camera, and I've already gone quite long with this. But this basics of this is enough for you to kind of grasp what I'm talking about. There are some firearms that they come out now that are made for concealability. Their barrel length is very short. The front of the gun is like right here. The gun is about this tall, right? To me, I don't like those kinds of guns. You know, like the M&P Shield. I mean, many of those little small, the Hellcat, the Hellcat from, I forgot who the manufacturer is right now, it just slipped my mind, but there are these little pistols that basically I can only grab with 2 fingers, my trigger finger, and then this pinky here, without an extension, the pinky is just floating around here because the gun is so small, I can't even hold it. I don't like those kinds of firearms. Maybe you do, that's up to you, but to me it doesn't make any sense. Yeah, you go for the size, that's great, but if you have to put an extension on the firearm to hold the same number of rounds as this one, but you want it for the small size, that's ridiculous. You're undoing everything. You might as well just buy this firearm, this one, this size, this make, this model, because you'll know you can get that full 3-finger here purchase, the thumb purchase here. You get a real nice master grip on this. If I'm gripping my firearm like this and I can't hold it here, it just feels weird to me. And you don't have as much control as when you have this. You know, I can control that firearm better. holding it here. It comes with serrations for you to rack your slide back there. Some people like serrations on the front. I'm not too fond of that style, but it is what it is. Whatever you like, that's yours. To me, I don't like putting my hand too close to the front when my firearm is loaded, because your bullet's coming out there super fast. If I got my finger there, boom! You do not want that. You don't want to ever look down the barrel of a firearm, even if it's unloaded, because again, we always treat it as if it's loaded. You can change the grips. As you can see, the grips here are just a plastic panel on the side of the steel, and they screw in with these. You can order, you know, customizable grips, or you can get, you know, different kinds of grips for this. Some people will put wood paneling on the side. That looks pretty sleek. I like to keep everything stock again, just because it is what it is. I bought it for concealment. It's all black. That's very easy to conceal in the dark. It's very easy to, size-wise, it's easy to keep. And so I don't modify it. I will buy a firearm in the future, which I will modify, but to me, everything about this firearm is manufactured to fit perfectly together. And when you introduce aftermarket parts, you're starting to introduce parts that were just made individually for themselves. They're designed for the firearm, but you know, they weren't made with the firearm. And so when you try to put things together, they don't necessarily fit properly. And that can affect the functionality of your firearm. And in a life and death situation, you don't want your gun to jam up on you. You don't want it to misfire or not fire at all. Or you don't want it to come apart, break while you're shooting it. But those introduce many different scary things that you just don't want to have to deal with. And like I said, it's best to deal with it as it's made, okay? And then from that point on, when you start to become more of a gun enthusiast, more of a professional, you can actually hit things. You know, you could hit like a dime off the top of your child's head. I wouldn't recommend that, but I'm just joking, you know. But let's say you get to be that good where you could actually hit a dime off your child's head at 600 yards with no scope. I laugh because you're not going to do that. I don't recommend you do that. It's super dangerous. You would never ever do that. But let's say you got so good you could actually be that accurate. Then I would say, you know, you're probably ready to start playing around with your firearms and modifying them, and that way, because you can learn to fix them and things like that. But as a novice or a beginner or an intermediate, I do not recommend that. I recommend that, to me, to develop more skill, it is more skillful to use the iron sights on your firearm. The nice, to me, I have my Tritium. Oh, these are, I don't remember which sights these are, but I have Tritiums on my Glock. That's why I remember. These are glow-in-the-dark sights, that night sights that, you know, when the lights go out, I can still see the dots, so I know what I'm aiming at. You know, you can start to play with that stuff later when you become more professional. And I like to go with the Tritium sights. Tritium is a highly radioactive substance that they use as a filler here. I mean, the thing causes super cancer, but the thing is, the wavelength of it before it decays is so small that the only way you'll get cancer is if you're like literally holding the tritium in your hands. But it glows for a long time, for thousands of years, because it's radioactive. And that's excellent. At night, you don't have any lights, you can see your dots. So, you know, you may not be able to see your target clearly, but you know generally where it is, and as long as you know how to line up those dots in your sight picture, you get your sight alignment, right? You align the front and the back sights, and then you get your sight picture, which is you start to look at the dots and the thing you're shooting at in the background as one picture. That's your sight picture. Once you get those things lined up and they function properly, I mean, you're golden. You can take out anything, take out anyone that's attacking you. So with that, I think I've said enough. I mean, pretty much right now I'm rambling, trying to think of things to cover about this. It comes with a rail on the bottom. It's like a Picatinny rail. They're the kind of things you see on the AR rifles, where they have them on the top and you mount your scopes and your flashlights and stuff on that. Here you can mount a laser sight or a flashlight on the bottom to assist you, so that you don't necessarily have to rely upon your night sights. So those are things that they do modify, or you can customize on your gun without affecting the overall performance of your firearm. Of course, it's going to affect the performance of your firearm a little bit because you're adding weight to the front of the firearm. This in itself is pretty heavy because it's all steel. That's another consideration, the steel versus the plastic polymer. But when you add things to the front, it adds more to the front, more weight to the front, which is not necessarily a bad thing, because keep in mind, when the firearm explodes or it shoots and you discharge it, the recoil kicks the front back like that. It kicks the front of the muzzle up like that. And so the more weight you have, the more recoil management you have when the firearm is going off. This is a takedown lever. Again, this is your decocker. This is your slide, what they call slide lock. When you pull the slide back, there's a notch right here, and you slide that notch back here, and then the lock will lock in there. Some call it a slide release. I don't really call it that, because it's more designed to lock the slide than to release it. The function of it is to just go up, and it locks into that little notch there and keeps it open. So I call that a slide lock. And you can use it to release the slide, where you'll push this down and then the slide will snap forward and it'll strip a round off of the magazine and chamber it. You can also do that just by simply pulling back manually on that and then letting go. This is not necessarily to release the slide. So that's your slide lock. This is your magazine release button. So if I insert my magazine in here and I click it in so it's in position, if I need to release it, what you have to do is you have to break your master grip, right? You break your master grip and rotate your thumb around, and you push the slide, or the magazine release, sorry, and it kicks out that magazine, or drops out that magazine. Yep, that's pretty much it. If you like what I said here, if you want more, go ahead and comment down below. Hit that subscribe button if it's your first time visiting. Hit the like button to show support for me. And make sure that you visit a lot of my links down below. I have affiliate links. YouTube demonetized me because of my political views, and I really don't give a crap. But you can help monetize me again by supporting the companies that I support. I am not an affiliate of Sig Sauer, although I probably should consider doing that. But I really love Sig Sauer just because of the way it feels in my hands. And I'm the type that likes something bulkier. But you know, oh shoot, I just thought of something else. The heavier the firearm, the harder it is to keep up, you know, long term. So you might want to think about that when it comes to weight. Anyway, back to the video. Make sure you hit that bell notification button and hit all notifications so you know the next time I upload a video. And if you could, most importantly, share this information with other people that you think can benefit from the information I share, please do so. Word of mouth is the best form of marketing, and I really enjoy that when you support me by doing that as well. So until then, happy hunting for your firearm. Make sure you take time on this purchase. This is a real process that you should think through. It's a journey. You may not know anything about it initially, but take time, learn as you go, and you know, you'll start to learn what works for you. Customize it for you. Make sure, because you're the one who's going to be using it. Don't worry about the next guy or the next girl. Worry about you. What do you feel comfortable holding? What can you use that accurately hits that target right in the middle? See, I can't even hit it by looking through the video. Boom, hits that target right in the middle, right? What can you use that makes you accurate all the time? What is safe in your hands? What do you understand about your firearm where you can manipulate it in any way, form, and fashion that makes it work and it's fast? Don't use a gun that you pick up and you're like, dang, what's this lever do? What's this do? This is a little bit more complex of a firearm, so like I said, striker fire, I tend to push people towards Glocks first, because those are the simpler firearms. They only have the slide lock on it. They have a takedown little switch instead of a lever. But taking down these firearms is very easy. I can even go through a video of that if you put that in the comments and request that later on. And hopefully you like this, and I look forward to seeing you guys. Happy shooting. Take care. Bye. Stay safe. And exercise your Second Amendment rights, and make sure you vote in a way to protect them. Don't vote for leftists.